One thing about data is it could be useful for many things, and at the same time, it could have severe implications that may not necessarily be intended. But one thing a lot of folk depend on is that a lot of people are not going to take too close a look at data. However, PlayStation may be unintentionally conditioning its own player base to pay very close attention to data sets, which will more than likely start having them think and explore what data they can actually back up with the pay that they're spending on their gaming. I'll explain. Listen to this snippet from Mark Cerny at the PlayStation Technical Reveal.
Reducing the graphical detail until those frame rates can be achieved. When asked to decide on a mode, players are choosing performance about 3/4 of the time.
Interesting. When asked about the graphics mode, players are choosing performance mode about 3/4 of the time, which means now most console players are interested in actually playing their games at higher frame rates. This is not a bad thing. However, there is something that I think will really make the PlayStation 5 have a very tough time in terms of being able to be sold to anyone. Why? Because now the console gamer is actually conditioned to ask themselves, what am I getting in terms of performance for the amount of money that I'm actually paying? And so most people are going to be in the position to actually wait and see. I've seen a lot of, comments online. I've seen a lot of people actually talking about this, and for the most part, they're going to wait and see. Even among the digital foundry tech experts, their whole idea, yes, they probably have an idea of what the performance would look like based on the data that was given, whether it was 60 CUs or 64% more or 72% more. There are different schools of thought about it. But at the end of the day, we still have to wait and see. However, on the PC side, there's a data set that we've had for a while now that is not necessarily the easiest to come up with. And, for the most part, because of price fluctuations, may not necessarily provide too much of a concrete data set. However, here is what I think will more than likely happen after we start having these conversations. You see, now the builds that can actually take on the PlayStation 5 and PS5 Pro are somewhat established. And this data set is what's called your cost per frame. I remember mentioning this in another video, but this is something that a few places, a few YouTube channels actually, put together. They'll take a lot of these GPUs and sometimes even, different build configurations. They'll look at the performance, and then at the end of the day, they'll look at what the MSRP of the different devices, that's basically the GPUs and the CPUs are, and they'll basically do a calculation to see what your cost is per frame that's actually being generated and given to you based on all of that data set. Right now, the PlayStation 5 Pro is being touted to be able to give you a lot of this performance, but the price point that they're asking for, giving you this performance that they supposedly were going to give you when the PS5 launched, is something that everyone is pretty much talking about right now. Are you paying, $200 to get maybe say 60 FPS guaranteed in every game? Is that $200 worth it? And so these are questions that we've asked ourselves when it came to PC components. For example, let me give you an idea of what it is that I'm talking about. I made a build that is about $650 to build. Right now, that build is about $630. I currently run that build for all my games because I know somebody will one day tell me, well, are you really using this build? And I've been using it since March, so, get out of here. And what I actually did and actually paid attention to very carefully was when I was actually picking the parts out to build this particular device, I was looking at components that were slightly better for the amount of money that they were asking. One of those particular, parts was the CPU. The CPU was a very important part because with GPUs, there are all kinds of different configurations, but you only have AMD, you only have Intel. But yes, even though AMD has a lot, it was still something that you had to consider at the end of the day. So when I took into account that CPU, the Ryzen 5 5500, I knew that close counterparts were also going to be attractive when it came down to actually building that particular computer. So in looking at the build, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the build right here, you can see that a Ryzen 5 5500 is an $80 CPU. This is a very attractive deal because this CPU is already better than the Ryzen 5 3600, which is recommended to play many games right now on PC. And I'm talking like the high level specs. And if you even think about it, because the AMD's 4800S is what in the Series X, we know that this CPU is better. However, I thought about, in order to maybe get this build to just finally overthrow any other refresh in the generation, why not possibly try to go with the 5600, which is the next Ryzen class that is actually above this a little bit. And so I started looking at some of the gameplay performance for the Ryzen 5 5500 compared to the Ryzen 5 5600. And believe you me, what I found was the 5600 or 5600X, which allows you to overclock, which is this one, which is asking $123.98, or if you're buying the 5600, $114, which compared to about $80, that is putting about $30 extra on your plate. I found that for about $30, I was getting on average about 20 frames or 30 frames more. And all I had to do was basically just Google, or just go on YouTube and basically say, let's say Ryzen 5 5500 versus, you see 5600. And then when you click it, you see a bunch of videos, you see a bunch of different performance and different metrics that people have done. And you can just see the charts and the graphs that they actually put together. And, this Old Spice ad will not get out of my way. It's so weird. They just threw an Old Spice ad in my video, right? And you can basically see what the performance looks like across the board. So when I started looking at it, I was like, well, hold on. So you mean to tell me that at 1080p, this game is going to be able to run me like 194 FPS, and then if I'm using the 5600, I get 250 FPS. Your eyes cannot see the difference between 194 and 250 FPS. That's not, I don't know what kind of eyes you have, but it's not going to see it. Now, if you were competing or, you plan on maybe trying to farm your friends for money, then sure, go for the higher FPS, but I'm not necessarily seeing the difference in this regard. Then this channel here, Hardware Tested, they put out Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080, 87 FPS to 102 FPS. Ladies and gentlemen, after 90 FPS, I can't tell you what's going on. I can feel 90 FPS. It's different from 60. You can feel it, but I don't know if you can really see it. So again, I was like, okay, for $30 or $40, depending on how the person wants to go, is the cost per frame actually necessary? I say all that to tell you that very soon the PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be subject to that. Because do you know what PlayStation is asking you? They're asking you for $200 extra. And so when the performance starts getting analyzed, people are going to basically analyze that performance against a $200 price tag and a disk drive of $80. So it's like $280. And they're going to ask and say, why should I spend $280? And what am I gaining from that $280 in terms of performance? Again, am I going to get 60 FPS guaranteed? Or am I going to be sitting here and be wondering if a game is going to give me a performance mode that I still have to choose, or an enhanced mode? And that enhanced mode, what does it mean? Does it mean I'm going to be playing 1440 native in some games? Because again, these tests were 1080 tests, but some, when you go ahead and look at some videos, they will do 1440 tests as well. They'll tell you and show you the different comparisons, for these CPUs at different benchmarks. And you can see them for yourself. And you can tell. Like this channel here basically just puts it together in terms of games and in terms of different, uses. And you can see the average FPS. You can see it at 1080. You can see it at 1080 at, or with the 3080, you can see it at different whatevers. If you keep going and digging, you'll see more for 1440. Because this CPU for 1440 would depend kind of on the GPU. So I guess they put it at 1080 to kind of give you like a base benchmark for the CPU. So when cost per frame comes into play, and when that question comes around when the PS5 Pro releases, I do not think that anybody who is critically thinking about this is going to be able to dodge the question, or at least dodge the reality that they're overspending, because I think they will be. That is what I think. I suspect. I might be wrong, but, I don't know. Based on what we're seeing from the data set, it just seems like that $200 is a premium. And do you believe it that people are trying to sell it as well? PlayStation is actually trying to, sell this to people who already have a PlayStation 5. This is for their sharks or whatever it is. No. This PS5 Pro is for no one. I mean, really, I can say with a high level of confidence that it really is for no one. It's just here to just kind of make money in some weird sense, or maybe we're starting to get to the point where, those subsidies are starting to wear thin on the console manufacturer. And so this refresh is for people who may just be unsuspecting as to exactly what it is that they're doing. But in all reality, I think this data set is going to basically diminish every possibility that anybody has to justify the PlayStation 5 Pro. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I know this is a little nitpicky in terms of this video, but hey, like I said, welcome. Welcome to PC Gaming. Many of you are about to learn exactly what all this stuff is about. And I think it's interesting. Talk to you later. Peace out.